Americans bought a backward bathrobe for $500 million, paid for rubber bands shaped like animals by the billion, swallowed diet shakes for 40 years that did exactly nothing, and one company literally invented a fake disease just to sell you mouthwash. And every single one of these products made millions while the people selling them laughed all the way to the bank. These are 111 real American products that were completely ridiculous, totally unnecessary, and somehow became some of the biggest selling products in history. And number 47 will make you question every purchase you have ever made. Hit subscribe so you never miss another dumb history video, and drop a comment telling us which one you actually owned, because we know you did. 1. And Snuggies were literally just a bathrobe worn backwards, and Americans handed over $500 million for it without blinking once. Some absolute genius looked at a regular robe, flipped it around, and announced to the world he had invented a blanket with sleeves like he had just cured a disease. The infomercial then showed entire families wearing these oversized fleece sacks at football stadiums, with dead serious expressions like, "This was completely dignified human behavior." No shame, no hesitation. Just pure American consumerism, doing what it does best and doing it beautifully. 2. Before Listerine became the thing, Americans gargle every morning. It was literally mopping surgical floors and scrubbing hospital tiles for a living. Then, in the 1920s, some brilliantly evil marketer invented a fake disease called halitosis, which was just a dramatic Latin way of saying bad breath. And suddenly, every American was medically terrified of their own mouth. Newspapers ran it like a health crisis. People panicked from Kansas City to Brooklyn, convinced they were biological hazards to society. The formula never changed by a single drop, but sales jumped from $100,000 to $4 million because Americans will buy anything if you scare them enough. 3. Furby was a plastic bird that spoke absolute nonsense gibberish, and Americans handed over $500 million for it in 1998 alone, like it was delivering classified information. Children across the country were obsessed with these creepy blinking creatures that babbled in a made-up language nobody could ever translate. But here is where it gets genuinely unhinged, because the Pentagon and the NSA actually banned Furby from classified government buildings because officials were convinced this plastic toy could record and repeat top-secret information. America was out here worrying about a children's toy committing espionage. 4. Silly bands were literally just rubber bands shaped like animals, and Americans spent $1.2 billion on them like they were precious jewels worth protecting. These things did absolutely nothing except sit on a child's wrist and look vaguely like a dolphin if you squinted hard enough. Schools across 40 American states banned them, which was genuinely the single greatest marketing move in elementary school history, because the moment a teacher said no, every single child immediately needed 50 of them. Banning a rubber band created the most urgent black market in third-grade American history. 5. In 1977, when bottled water first appeared in America, experts laughed out loud and publicly declared that no sane human being would ever pay money for something that came free from their kitchen tap. These were educated professionals making what seemed like a completely reasonable prediction about basic human logic. So they were spectacularly wrong, because Americans now spend $20 billion every single year buying bottled water, making it one of the most profitable beverage industries ever created. The tap is still right there. It has always been right there. Americans simply refuse to acknowledge its existence. 6. Baby Einstein videos sold 90 million copies to proud American parents who were absolutely convinced they were raising the next generation of geniuses by sitting their toddlers in front of a television screen. The entire premise was that colorful puppets and classical music playing on a DVD would somehow turbocharge infant brain development, and parents bought it completely without hesitation. Then, Harvard researchers arrived and published a study proving the videos actually delayed language development in children. So Disney panicked and offered full refunds to every family who purchased them. Almost no American parent asked for their money back. 7. Crocs are objectively one of the ugliest shoes ever placed on a human foot, and Time magazine agreed so strongly they officially listed them as one of the 50 worst inventions ever made in human history. Fashion critics universally mocked them. Designers publicly refused to acknowledge their existence. Normal people pointed and stared. None of it mattered even slightly, because 300 million pairs have been sold globally, and Americans continue purchasing them with zero guilt and maximum comfort. The lesson America taught the entire world is that if something feels good enough, nobody cares what it looks like. 8. See, power balance bracelets were silicone wristbands with a tiny hologram sticker glued to them, and Americans spent $100 million buying them because the company claimed they could improve strength balance and flexibility through the power of a decorative sticker. Athletes wore them. Coaches recommended them. Regular Americans bought them in bulk, convinced their physical performance was being enhanced by what was essentially a rubber bracelet with arts and crafts decoration on it. Then the Australian government stepped in, forced the company into court, and made them publicly admit under oath that the hologram did absolutely nothing. 9. Why Beanie Babies were small stuffed animals filled with plastic pellets, and in the 1990s, Americans collectively lost their entire minds, deciding these were serious financial investments for retirement. Grown adults purchased them in sealed plastic display cases and stored them in climate-controlled rooms, convinced they were building generational wealth through tiny bean-filled bears. Financial advisors watched in horror as families poured real money into stuffed animals. Then, 1999 arrived, and the entire secondary market collapsed overnight, making every single Beanie Baby worth less than the original $5 price tag. The retirement plan became a garage sale. 10. WD-40 was invented in 1953 by a California aerospace company as a rust prevention spray specifically designed to protect nuclear missile parts from corrosion, which is about as serious and specialized as a product can possibly get. Then a worker accidentally left a can in the employee break room, and regular people started using it on squeaky hinges and rusty bolts, and suddenly, the nuclear missile spray became a household staple. It grew into a $400 million consumer product, and Americans now claim it has over 2,000 uses, including rubbing it on their knees to cure arthritis. 11. Red Bull arrived in America in 1997. And health experts lined up to publicly declare that carbonated taurine drinks would never sell to American consumers because the taste was simply too medicinal and strange. These experts were catastrophically wrong, because Americans now drink 3 billion cans every single year, making it a $4 billion business. The funniest part is that nobody actually enjoys the taste. Every single person who drinks Red Bull describes it as liquid medicine, and then immediately opens another one. 12. Ugg boots were invented for Australian surfers to warm their frozen feet after crawling out of cold ocean water, which means they were designed for one very specific practical purpose in one very specific climate. Then America discovered them and immediately made them a $1.5 billion fashion statement worn enthusiastically in summer with shorts in 90-degree heat. See, Australian surfers watched in complete confusion as American women strutted through Las Vegas in July, wearing waterproof sheep boots designed for cold, wet beaches. Fashion has never made less geographical sense. 13. The clapper sold 8 million units of a device that turned lights on and off when you clapped twice, which sounds incredibly convenient until you actually owned one. The thing was accidentally triggered by coughing, sneezing, television audio, dogs barking, and guests laughing at dinner parties, creating an uncontrollable disco experience nobody requested. Every single clapper owner has a story about their lights going haywire at 3 in the morning. The one moment Americans actually needed it to work, it sat completely silent and unresponsive, like it was personally offending them. 14. See, vibrating weight loss belts were a genuine product that sold millions throughout the 1980s by convincing Americans they could lose weight by strapping a motorized belt around their waist and sitting completely still on the couch watching television. The entire concept was that the vibration would somehow shake the fat off the human body, while the person exerted zero physical effort whatsoever. Every single medical study conducted confirmed absolutely 0 calories were burned during use. The infomercials ignored every study completely and continued running on American television for 15 straight years without changing a single claim. 15. Chia Pets sold 15 million units of a terracotta animal figurine that grew patchy grass on its back, and the commercial jingle, Chia, somehow became more recognizable to the average American than most of their own state capitals. The product had exactly one function, which was growing mediocre grass on a pottery shape, and it performed that single function adequately at best. No practical use existed beyond that. Americans bought 15 million of them anyway, and the company has been selling the exact same terracotta concept completely unchanged for over 40 consecutive years. 16. Tamagotchi sold 40 million units across America by 1996, and the entire premise was that Americans would form genuine emotional attachments to a pixelated digital creature living on a keychain that died if you forgot to feed it for 6 hours. Schools banned them because children were sneaking them into class to prevent digital death. Employers complained about productivity losses. Therapists began reporting children experiencing real documented grief when the batteries ran out and their pixel pet perished. America collectively mourned tiny digital creatures that never existed while carrying them clipped to their backpacks like sacred objects. 17. Axe body spray sold $500 million worth of aerosol cans by convincing an entire generation of American teenage boys that spraying themselves aggressively would cause women to chase them through the streets like a cartoon. The advertising was completely ridiculous, and every single teenager knew it was completely ridiculous and bought 12 cans anyway. Schools began banning Axe after students were hospitalizing hallways with overwhelming fragrance clouds that triggered mass headaches. A product that caused school evacuations became one of the best-selling grooming items in American retail history, purely through the power of absurd teenage optimism. 18. Lunchables launched in 1988 as a convenient kids' lunch option, and nutritionists immediately and loudly declared them one of the least nutritious food products ever legally sold to American children in a grocery store. The entire contents were processed crackers, processed cheese, and processed meat, arranged in a plastic tray with dramatic compartments, making it feel like a gourmet experience. None of that stopped Americans from spending $1 billion annually on them. Parents who knew exactly what was inside kept buying them because the compartments were genuinely satisfying, and children considered them peak culinary achievement. 19. Hammer pants were parachute trousers so extraordinarily wide at the crotch that wearing them made basic physical movement a genuine engineering challenge, and running in them was medically inadvisable. MC Hammer performed in them on international television, and American teenagers decided this was the pinnacle of human fashion, and immediately demanded their parents spend real money on glorified fabric balloons. The pants served no functional purpose. They restricted movement, collected wind, and required significant extra fabric costing extra money. Americans bought millions of pairs and wore them to school completely unironically with absolute confidence. 20. George Foreman sold 100 million countertop grills, despite the fact that every single American household purchasing one already owned a perfectly functional stove that had been doing the same job for years. The grill was endorsed by a boxer, which apparently was all the culinary credibility Americans required to abandon their existing kitchen appliances entirely. The truly remarkable part of this story is that George Foreman personally earned more money from licensing his name to this countertop grill than from his entire professional boxing career combined. A grill made a heavyweight champion more money than heavyweight championship fights. 21. Proactive Acne Cream built a $1 billion mail subscription business by mailing Americans monthly boxes of skincare products endorsed by celebrities with perfect complexions who almost certainly did not achieve those complexions using Proactive. Dermatologists consistently and publicly rated it no more effective than basic drugstore products, costing 1/10 of the monthly subscription price. Americans kept the subscription running anyway because the celebrity endorsements felt more medically credible than actual medical professionals. Nothing sells skincare to Americans faster than a famous person with good lighting claiming responsibility for their own genetics. 22. Pringles are not legally potato chips, and this is not an opinion but an actual court ruling that happened in both America and the United Kingdom. After judges examined the product and determined it contains so little actual potato that calling it a chip would be legally misleading to consumers. The official classification is a potato-based snack, which sounds significantly less appealing on a can. Americans buy $1.4 billion worth of them every single year and have never once stopped to read what they are technically eating, according to a judge. 23. And in 1996, American parents committed actual physical violence against each other in Walmart aisles fighting over a giggling red puppet named Elmo. And the toy industry watched in stunned disbelief as otherwise reasonable adults lost complete control of themselves over a stuffed character from a children's television program. Scalpers purchased every available unit and resold them for $1,500 each on the secondary market. The toy retailed for $28. Parents paid $1,500 without hesitation. Tickle Me Elmo did nothing except giggle and vibrate, and it nearly destroyed American civil behavior in December. 24. A shake weight sold 2 million units of a dumbbell that vibrated back and forth in the user's hand, and was marketed with complete seriousness as a revolutionary arm-toning breakthrough that would transform the human body through the power of oscillation. Every fitness expert who examined it confirmed it provided less resistance than simply holding a standard 2-pound weight completely still without moving it at all. The marketing ignored every expert completely. Americans bought 2 million vibrating dumbbells and used them earnestly in their living rooms, convinced they were doing something meaningful for their biceps. 25. Mood rings sold 20 million units in the 1970s by claiming that a color-changing stone could scientifically detect and display the precise emotional state of whoever was wearing it. Which sounds impressive until you learn that scientists immediately and publicly confirmed the ring detected only skin temperature and nothing else, remotely connected to human emotions. This information was published widely in newspapers Americans were actively reading. Sales did not slow down by a single unit. Americans simply decided that skin temperature and emotional state were close enough and kept buying rings to understand their own feelings. 26. Von Dutch trucker hats were deliberately ugly mesh caps worn intentionally sideways, and somehow this became a $30 million American fashion brand in the early 2000s because a handful of celebrities decided ironic ugliness was the new sophistication. Americans paid serious money for hats designed to look cheap, and the entire brand peaked and completely collapsed within 3 years, leaving behind nothing except photographs of people at red carpet events wearing gas station hats with absolute confidence. The Von Dutch empire rose and fell faster than most American presidential administrations and left considerably less legacy. 27. ShamWow sold millions of chamois cloths by running infomercials, where an enthusiastic man in a headset screamed about the cloth holding 12 times its weight in liquid, which sounds extraordinary until you test a regular kitchen towel and discover it performs completely identically in every measurable way. Independent tests confirmed no practical difference existed between ShamWow and the towels already sitting in every American kitchen drawer. Americans bought them anyway because the infomercial man seemed genuinely passionate, and passion apparently substitutes for evidence when Americans are watching television at 2 in the morning. 28. Our airborne tablets sold $300 million worth of fizzy vitamin supplements, claiming to prevent colds, and the entire medical credibility of the product rested on the fact that it was invented by a second-grade school teacher with absolutely zero medical training whatsoever. Americans bought them by the millions because the packaging looked sufficiently scientific and the name sounded appropriately medical. The FTC eventually sued for false advertising, and the company paid $23 million in settlements. Then they kept selling the exact same tablets with slightly reworded packaging, and Americans kept buying them without missing a single purchase. 29. Gatorade was invented in 1965 specifically for the University of Florida football team by researchers working on the university campus using university resources, and the drink was literally named after the university's own team mascot, the Gators, making the connection about as obvious as possible. The university received exactly zero royalties as the drink became a $5 billion global product. Florida watched Gatorade become one of the most profitable beverages in American history while receiving nothing except the honor of having their mascot name on the bottle. The Gators got the name. Quaker Oats got the billions. 30. Garbage Pail Kids were grotesque trading cards depicting Cabbage Patch dolls in various states of disgusting catastrophe, and parents were so horrified by them that they actually lobbied the United States Congress to have a children's trading card officially banned by the federal government. Congress held public hearings about sticker cards. Actual legislators debated gross cartoon children in official government chambers. The congressional attention was the single greatest advertisement the cards ever received because every American child who heard adults were trying to ban something immediately needed to own every single card in the complete collection. 31. Thigh Master sold 10 million units of a spring-loaded leg squeezer, endorsed by Suzanne Summers, who demonstrated it while sitting comfortably on a couch watching television, which was also exactly how every American used it. The device was marketed as a serious fitness tool targeting specific leg muscles with precision and intensity. Fitness scientists examined it carefully and confirmed it engaged approximately 3% of the leg muscles it claimed to target. Americans squeezed 10 million spring devices on their couches and called it a workout with complete sincerity. 32. Slim Fast built a $500 million annual business on a plan so simple it was almost insulting, which was replace 2 meals with a shake and eat 1 sensible dinner. Long-term studies published by actual researchers confirmed the results were identical to simply eating less food using regular food. The company ignored every study completely and sold the exact same product under refreshed packaging with new celebrity endorsers for 40 consecutive years. Americans kept buying chocolate shakes convinced the powder was doing something their own willpower alone could never accomplish without corporate assistance. 33. 8-track tapes sold 500 million units across America, despite being a music format physically incapable of rewinding, which meant if you missed your favorite part of a song, you were simply done experiencing that part forever until the tape looped again naturally. Songs were routinely cut off mid-note when the track automatically switched between sections at random intervals the engineers chose. Americans accepted this as normal music listening behavior and bought 500 million tapes anyway before cassettes arrived, offering the revolutionary feature of going backwards, and the format died immediately. 34. Juicy Couture built a $600 million annual fashion empire by selling velour-matching sets to American women at $200 per outfit, and the entire business model was essentially convincing people that paying premium prices to wear bedazzled pajamas in public was a sophisticated lifestyle choice rather than a surrender to comfort. It worked completely. American women wore velour tracksuits to restaurants, airports, and shopping malls from 2001 to 2008 with total confidence. The brand collapsed as suddenly as it appeared, leaving behind millions of rhinestone-covered sweatpants in American closets. 35. AOL mailed 1 billion free trial (CDS) to virtually every American address throughout the 1990s in a carpet-bombing marketing campaign that cost $300 million and resulted in the discs being used as coasters, frisbees, Christmas ornaments, and art installation materials by Americans who had no interest in dial-up internet but appreciated receiving free circular objects in the mail regularly. Despite the mockery, it became one of the most effective marketing campaigns in American business history, proving that if you send Americans something free enough times, eventually enough of them will actually use it. 36. Heinz launched purple ketchup in the year 2000 targeting American children, with the theory that kids would find colored condiments exciting, and parents would buy anything that made vegetables slightly more appealing at dinner. They sold 10 million bottles of purple condiment before parents collectively decided they could not psychologically handle looking at purple ketchup on a plate, and the product disappeared. Green ketchup launched simultaneously and also sold millions. Americans bought millions of bottles of wrong-colored ketchup for their children, then discontinued purchasing it the moment they actually saw it on food. 37. Pokemon cards turned American elementary schools into functioning black markets in 1999 with children stealing, trading aggressively, and getting robbed in school parking lots over holographic pieces of cardboard featuring fictional Japanese creatures. Schools banned them nationwide, which accomplished nothing except making them more valuable. Parents confiscated them, which made children hide them more creatively. $10 billion worth of cards were sold, making them the most valuable paper rectangles in American educational history. A cardboard picture of a fictional electric mouse generated more economic activity than some entire American industries that year. 38. Pajama jeans were stretchy pants printed to look like denim and sold to Americans as legitimate public outerwear. And the company's entire founding premise was essentially that Americans had collectively given up on wearing real pants with buttons and structure and dignity. The company looked at the American consumer and made a calculated bet that comfort had permanently defeated fashion in this country. They were absolutely 100% correct. Millions of pairs sold immediately. Americans wore printed pajama fabric to grocery stores and family gatherings, and nobody said a single word because everyone understood. 39. 5-Hour Energy built a $1 billion business selling 2-ounce bottles of liquid containing the exact same caffeine found in a standard cup of coffee that Americans were already drinking every morning from a machine sitting on their kitchen counter. The bottles cost significantly more per ounce than coffee, tea, or any other caffeinated beverage available anywhere on Earth. Americans paid 10 times the price per ounce because the bottle was smaller and faster to hold. Though the entire value proposition was convenience, and Americans decided convenience alone was worth paying 10 times more for indefinitely. 40. Laser tag home sets were sold to American families throughout the 1980s as the ultimate backyard battle experience despite being built on infrared technology that functioned only within 50 feet indoors under controlled conditions. The packaging showed children running dramatically through outdoor spaces, having the time of their lives. Every single American parent bought them specifically for outdoor backyard use. Every single set stopped functioning the moment children stepped outside, because sunlight completely overwhelmed the infrared signal. The sets collected dust in garages by February, sitting next to the fondue sets and the food dehydrators. 41. Ed Hardy took a tattoo artist's designs and slapped bedazzled skulls and screaming eagles onto t-shirts retailing at $200 each, and somehow convinced Americans this was high fashion rather than a gas station souvenir with rhinestones. It became a $700 million brand overnight. Reality TV stars wore it exclusively, which should have been a warning sign, but instead functioned as free advertising. Then one morning in 2010, America collectively woke up embarrassed, and the entire brand evaporated from existence like it had never happened, leaving behind only regrettable photographs. 42. Toshiba spent years telling Americans that HD DVD was the definitive future of home entertainment, and millions of believers opened their wallets and purchased expensive players to build their movie collections around this confident corporate promise. 18 months later, Blu-ray won the format war completely, and every HD DVD player ever manufactured became an expensive paperweight sitting beneath American televisions, serving absolutely no function. Toshiba discontinued the format without significant apology. Americans who trusted the wrong rectangle-shaped disc learned an expensive lesson about believing electronics companies when they used the word definitive. 43. Surge Soda was Coca-Cola's aggressive attempt to destroy Mountain Dew in 1996. And it sold millions before being discontinued in 2002, leaving behind a generation of devoted American fans who refused to accept the loss quietly. A dedicated fan group campaigned for 12 straight years to bring Surge back, including purchasing a billboard directly outside Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta to make their feelings impossible to ignore. Coca-Cola eventually relaunched it exclusively on Amazon in 2014, and it sold out within hours, proving Americans will wait over a decade for a discontinued citrus soda. 44. Razor scooters sold 5 million units in the year 2000 alone, and simultaneously increased national emergency room visits for ankle injuries by 40%, which is an extraordinary achievement for a children's toy with 2 wheels and a handlebar. Schools banned them immediately upon seeing the first injury. Parents confiscated them within days of Christmas morning. None of this stopped Americans from buying 5 million of them in a single calendar year, making them simultaneously the most gifted and most immediately confiscated Christmas present of the entire decade by a significant margin. 45. Odd Pillow Pets sold $300 million worth of stuffed animals that unfolded into pillows through a transformation requiring the owner to fold the animal completely in half, which is a disturbing thing to do to something with a face. The marketing promised a product functioning brilliantly as both a cuddly companion and a comfortable sleeping surface. Independent owners discovered it performed adequately as neither. The animal shape was unconvincing and the pillow was lumpy. Americans bought $300 million worth anyway because the commercial showed children looking genuinely delighted, and that was sufficient evidence. 46. The ginkgo biloba became a $250 million American supplement market, built entirely on claims that the extract improved memory and cognitive function in aging adults who were understandably motivated to believe something inexpensive could protect their minds. Then, a clinical trial involving 3,000 actual human participants was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, finding zero evidence of any memory benefit whatsoever under any condition tested. The journal published the findings. Americans read the journal. Sales of ginkgo biloba increased after publication because hope is more powerful than peer-reviewed research. 47. VHS rewinders were dedicated machines with exactly one function, which was rewinding a VHS tape, and Americans purchased millions of them specifically to avoid the $1 fee video rental stores charged for returning an unrewound tape. The math required purchasing a $30 machine to avoid a $1 fee, meaning the device paid for itself after 30 rentals if the customer never forgot to use it, which they frequently did. Americans bought the machine anyway because paying $30 once felt psychologically superior to paying $1 repeatedly, despite being mathematically identical or worse. 48. Shoulder pads turned into a $300 million American fashion industry throughout the 1980s as women began sewing foam bricks into blazers, dresses, blouses, and eventually, items of clothing that had no logical reason to contain structural padding of any kind. The stated aesthetic goal was creating the silhouette of an NFL linebacker while attending a corporate business meeting or a casual dinner party. Americans pursued this goal with remarkable dedication for nearly a decade before someone looked at a photograph from 1987, and the entire country simultaneously agreed to never discuss it again. 49. Norton Antivirus sold millions of annual subscriptions, promising American computer owners comprehensive protection from digital threats. And for years it delivered reasonable results until the software grew so extraordinarily bloated and resource-hungry that it consumed more of the computer's processing power than most actual viruses ever attempted to use. Tech support professionals across America began telling customers that the very first step to fixing a slow computer was uninstalling Norton completely. A product sold specifically to fix computers became the thing professionals removed first when computers needed fixing. The irony was lost on nobody except Norton. 50. Crystal Pepsi launched in 1992 as a completely transparent cola, and Americans bought $474 million worth of a colorless drink tasting exactly like regular Pepsi in its first year alone, which proved Americans were genuinely curious about seeing through their beverages. Then sales collapsed, not because the taste changed, but because the clear color felt psychologically wrong to consumers who had spent decades associating cola with a specific dark brown appearance. Americans rejected a perfectly fine drink because it looked incorrect. The formula was identical. The color was the entire problem and nothing else. 51. Cabbage Patch Kids triggered the first documented American toy riot in 1983 when adults began physically fighting each other inside stores over a yarn-haired doll that came with an adoption certificate, like it was a real child requiring legal paperwork. 3 million units sold in year one at 10 times retail price on the black market. Grown Americans paid scalper prices for a fabric doll with a plastic face because the adoption certificate made it feel emotionally irresponsible to leave one behind on a shelf. 52. Floby sold 2 million units of a hair-cutting device that attached directly to a household vacuum cleaner and sucked hair into a rotating blade while the vacuum ran loudly beside the user's head. The concept required complete trust that a suction-powered blade would deliver a consistent haircut rather than an emergency room visit. Americans trusted it completely. 2 million units sold. The truly remarkable part is that Floby was never discontinued and remains actively manufactured and purchased in America today by a dedicated community of believers who have never looked back. 53. Biotin supplements became a $500 million American market built on claims that the vitamin grew hair faster and strengthened nails dramatically in adults seeking visible improvements to both. And the FDA then confirmed that for individuals without an actual biotin deficiency, which accounts for nearly every American alive, the supplements produce zero measurable effect on hair or nails whatsoever. Americans learned this information and continued purchasing biotin supplements in growing quantities anyway, because the alternative was accepting that their hair was simply their hair, and nothing purchasable would change that reality. 54. Crossword puzzle books became a national obsession in 1924 when Simon & Schuster decided their very first publication as a brand new company would be a book of word puzzles which every established publisher in New York laughed at openly and dismissed as commercially ridiculous. Simon & Schuster sold 350,000 copies immediately upon release. Every publisher who laughed spent the following months desperately rushing their own crossword books to print trying to catch up. Utah eventually declared Jell-O the state snack, but crossword puzzles conquered the entire nation without requiring a single government endorsement. 55. Livestrong bracelets were 80 million yellow rubber bands sold for $1 each as cancer awareness symbols, and Americans wore them proudly until Lance Armstrong admitted to systematic doping and the collective bracelet removal happened so fast it looked choreographed. Americans threw away rubber bands by the millions in unified moral outrage. The bracelet itself had raised genuine cancer awareness and done nothing wrong personally. It was a rubber band. It had no agency. But Americans punished the bracelet anyway because someone needed to be held accountable, and Armstrong's wrist was no longer available. 56. The Talkboy was a toy tape recorder sold exclusively because it appeared in Home Alone 2 and American children needed to own every object Macaulay Culkin touched in a movie, regardless of practical function. Its signature feature was playing recordings back in a deep, dramatically slowed voice. 2 million units sold. Every single American child who owned one used it exclusively to make prank phone calls to grandparents and relatives who had no idea why the caller suddenly sounded like a tiny villain. It was marketed as a toy. It functioned as a prank weapon. 57. Vitamin water was purchased by Coca-Cola for $4.1 billion and marketed aggressively as the healthy, intelligent alternative to sugary sodas for Americans making conscious lifestyle choices. A lawsuit then revealed each bottle contained 33 grams of sugar, making it comparable to actual soda. Coca-Cola's own legal team argued in court documents that no reasonable consumer could genuinely believe vitamin water was healthy. Coca-Cola spent $4 billion acquiring a drink, then argued in court their own product was obviously not what it claimed. Americans kept drinking it regardless. 58. Our Pogs were cardboard milk cap discs that American children collected obsessively throughout the 1990s, despite having a combined monetary value approaching zero and a gameplay mechanic involving stacking them and hitting the stack with a heavier disc. Over 500 schools banned them nationally. In 1994, a child's Pog collection could be worth genuine money on the playground secondary market. By 1996, the entire value had evaporated completely, and every collection was worth approximately nothing. Americans experienced a complete financial market cycle of boom and total collapse using cardboard circles the size of a quarter. 59. An EZ Cracker sold millions of a plastic device designed specifically for cracking eggs, which is a task the entire human civilization has performed successfully with bare hands for roughly 10,000 uninterrupted years without requiring dedicated equipment. The infomercial justified the product's existence by featuring actors dramatically struggling with eggs, like the shells were actively fighting back against them. Egg after egg was shown splattering catastrophically across kitchen counters in the hands of apparently incompetent adults. Americans watched the fake egg disasters and purchased the plastic cracker because the performance was genuinely convincing and slightly concerning. 60. Acai berry supplements became a $500 million American market in 2008 after a famous television doctor endorsed them as a miraculous weight loss solution, and Americans emptied store shelves within days of the broadcast. The FTC subsequently charged dozens of supplement companies with outright fraud for the claims being made. The acai berry itself is a real fruit that exists and grows normally. The supplement claims surrounding it were entirely fabricated by marketers who watched one television endorsement and immediately built fictional science around a legitimate berry to extract maximum money from hopeful Americans. 61. Hypercolor shirts sold 50 million. Heat-sensitive color-changing t-shirts in 1991. And the technology worked exactly as advertised, which was precisely the problem. Neither the shirts changed color wherever body heat was highest on the human body, meaning they functioned as a detailed sweat map, highlighting every embarrassing moisture zone with bright contrasting colors for everyone nearby to examine. Americans wore them to school and work, before realizing the shirt was actively betraying their bodies publicly. The entire product line was discontinued after a single season because it was too honest. 62. Platform sneakers gave the Spice Girls a $200 million American fashion category throughout the 1990s by selling shoes with soles up to 6 inches thick that podiatrists immediately flagged as structurally dangerous to human ankles. Documented injuries included broken ankles from routine walking activities. The medical warnings reached American consumers clearly and completely. Millions of pairs sold regardless, because 5 British women wore them on television, and American teenagers decided looking 4 inches taller was worth the orthopedic consequences. Fashion has historically been painful, but platform sneakers made that relationship aggressively literal. 63. Real Player was downloaded by 100 million Americans in the late 1990s as the only software capable of playing online video and audio, making it genuinely essential despite being almost universally despised by everyone who used it. During installation, it secretly added 14 additional unwanted programs to the computer without requesting permission or mentioning their existence. Americans discovered this only after their computers slowed dramatically. Tech professionals rated it the most hated software in American computing history. Some Americans kept it installed anyway because removing it meant losing access to online video entirely, and that was worse. 64. Olestra potato chips launched in 1996 as a revolutionary zero-calorie fat substitute, and the FDA approved them with one condition, which was that every single bag must carry a printed warning that consumption may cause anal leakage. This warning appeared on every bag in clear, readable text. Americans read the warning, processed the information, and bought millions of bags anyway because the chips were labeled fat-free. And that label apparently outweighed every other consideration, including the specific medical warning printed directly beside it. Fat-free meant everything. The warning meant nothing. 65. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers generated $1 billion in American toy sales in 1994. And concerned parents were so alarmed by the show's violent content that Congress held actual public hearings about a children's television program featuring people in colored spandex fighting rubber monsters. Legislators debated it seriously in official government chambers. The congressional attention was broadcast nationally. Every American child who heard that Congress was trying to stop a TV show immediately sat down and watched every available episode with renewed devotion. Government opposition was the greatest ratings boost in Power Rangers history. 66. The Abdominizer sold 6 million units of a rocking plastic device Americans sat upon while watching television, and it was marketed with complete seriousness as an effortless abdominal workout requiring minimal physical engagement. Fitness scientists examined the device thoroughly and confirmed it engaged approximately 0% of actual abdominal muscles during normal use. The infomercial continued running unchanged. 6 million Americans rocked gently on plastic while watching evening television, genuinely believing their core muscles were being transformed. The only thing getting a workout was the credulity of the American consumer, and that muscle never gets tired. 67. Ear candling kits sold millions through American health stores by instructing customers to insert a hollow fabric candle into their ear canal and light the other end on fire, claiming the resulting heat would suction earwax out through the tube. The FDA investigated, tested the product thoroughly, and published findings confirming the candles created zero suction, deposited candle wax directly into the ear canal, and had caused documented burns to multiple American users. The findings were published publicly. Sales continued without interruption because the ritual felt therapeutic, regardless of what federal investigators concluded about it. 68. Disco Records sold 500 million albums between 1974 and 1979, making it the dominant American music format of the decade until a Chicago radio DJ named Steve Dahl organized an event at Comiskey Park where he literally exploded a crate of disco records between baseball games in front of 50,000 people. The anti-disco movement itself became a cultural phenomenon more documented than most of the music it opposed. An entire genre generating $500 million in sales was ceremonially destroyed at a baseball stadium, and Americans treated the explosion as a legitimate cultural turning point. 69. JNCO jeans sold millions of pants featuring leg openings up to 50 inches wide, which is physically wide enough to fit a small child completely inside one leg without any visible discomfort. American schools banned them specifically for concealing contraband inside the cavernous leg openings, which were essentially portable storage units attached to a waistband. Students hid everything imaginable inside the legs. Parents were baffled. Teachers were exhausted. The wider the leg opening, the more urgently American teenagers needed to own them. JNCO inadvertently turned a pants leg into the most searched hiding spot in public education. 70. Zip drives were sold by Omega in 1994 as the revolutionary future of personal data storage using 100 megabyte disks costing $20 each, and Americans bought 2 million drives building entire storage systems around the format. USB drives arrived 5 years later, holding more data on a device smaller than a thumb for $2. Every zip drive became instantly obsolete. Every zip disk ever manufactured is now completely unreadable by any currently existing device. Americans built their digital lives around a storage format that became archaeologically irrelevant within a single presidential term. 71. Dunkaroos were kangaroo-shaped cookies sold with a tiny tub of frosting, and General Mills discontinued them in America in 2012 while continuing to sell them normally in Canada like nothing happened. Americans discovered Canadians still had Dunkaroos and responded with the only logical reaction, which was driving across the international border specifically to purchase cookies. A documented black market for Canadian Dunkaroos developed inside America. General Mills watched Americans smuggle their own discontinued product across a national border for 8 years before relaunching them domestically in 2020 to demand so overwhelming it crashed several retail websites simultaneously. 72. Creepy crawlers sold millions of sets allowing children to pour liquid plastic into metal molds and bake rubber bugs at 300 degrees using a heating element with zero protective covering of any kind. The Consumer Product Safety Commission issued formal burn risk warnings about the product. The warnings were printed directly on the packaging in clear text. Children read the warnings, understood the burn risk completely, and purchased more units as a direct result because a toy that came with an official government safety warning was self-evidently the most exciting toy in the entire store. 73. The Perfect Brownie Pan sold 3 million units of a divided baking pan, ensuring every single brownie piece came out with 4 crispy edges instead of the traditional 2. And it solved a problem so minor that most Americans had never consciously identified it as a problem requiring a dedicated solution. Then the pan accidentally ignited a cultural civil war. Americans who had never previously considered brownie edge preferences suddenly had intense, passionate opinions about edges versus centerpieces that generated genuine arguments at family gatherings. 3 million pans created a national dessert controversy that continues today. 74. Rogaine launched in 1988 selling minoxidil foam, originally developed as a blood pressure medication, whose researchers noticed patients were growing unexpected hair as a side effect and immediately understood they had accidentally discovered something far more commercially valuable than blood pressure treatment. The product worked and sold $100 million worth in its first years. The detail Rogaine never prominently advertised was that stopping use caused every single regrown hair to fall out completely within months. Americans discovered this only after stopping. Then they started again. The exit strategy was always buying more Rogaine forever. 75. Say Atari sold 4 million copies of the E.T. video game in 1982, which reviewers immediately called the worst game ever made, with controls so confusing the main character spent most of gameplay falling into holes. Atari buried 700,000 unsold cartridges in a New Mexico desert landfill and covered them with concrete, apparently hoping nobody would notice or care. Archaeologists excavated the burial site in 2014, and the recovered cartridges sold immediately at auction as collectibles. Americans paid money for the worst game ever made twice. Once in 1982 and again 32 years later as ironic treasure. 76. Hypercolor paint was a heat-sensitive color. Changing finish sold for American bicycles and helmets in the late 1980s, promising a dynamic visual experience that changed with temperature and movement. The first exposure to rain caused the paint to fade permanently and unevenly in random patches that looked less like intentional design and more like a disease affecting the bicycle. Millions of units sold before the rain-fading issue became publicly understood by consumers. American children rode visibly diseased-looking bicycles through entire summers before the company quietly acknowledged the product had a fundamental relationship problem with water. 77. Microsoft Zune launched in 2006 as the company's direct and confident answer to Apple's iPod, and Microsoft employees were so privately unconvinced by their own product that they refused to use Zunes publicly in the Seattle tech community, where being seen with one carried genuine social consequences among colleagues. For 2 million units sold to Americans who trusted Microsoft's confidence. Discontinued in 2011 without ceremony. Former Zune owners now sell them on eBay as ironic collectibles at prices exceeding the original retail cost, proving Americans will eventually pay premium prices for any failed technology if enough time passes. 78. Orbit's drinks launched in 1997 as a clear beverage containing edible floating balls suspended in liquid using a technique borrowed directly from oil drilling fluid technology, which is information the marketing team wisely chose not to feature prominently in any advertising campaign. The floating balls served no flavor purpose, and the drink was pulled from shelves within a single year of launch. Original bottles containing the floating spheres now sell for $30 each as collector items. Americans refused to drink a beverage with floating balls in 1997 and now pay $30 to display the same bottle undrunk on a shelf. 79. Bratz dolls launched in 2001 and reached $2 billion in sales by 2005 before Mattel sued MGA Entertainment, claiming the designer had created the dolls while employed at Mattel, making the intellectual property legally theirs. Both companies then spent a decade in courtrooms with combined legal fees exceeding $1 billion fighting over fashion dolls with oversized heads. The legal fees alone exceeded the GDP of several small nations. MGA kept the dolls after final settlement. Mattel spent $1 billion in lawyers to lose. American children played with Bratz throughout the entire legal proceedings completely unbothered. 80. Say Snackmaster food dehydrators sold millions across America in the 1980s by promising home cooks the ability to make professional beef jerky and dried fruit from their own kitchen counter using only time and low heat applied over 12 consecutive hours per tray. Americans bought them enthusiastically convinced they were investing in a lifetime of homemade snacks. The first batch took 12 hours. The second batch took motivation nobody had anymore. Within 6 months, every dehydrator in America was sitting in a cabinet directly beside the unused fondue set, and the pasta maker still in its original box. 81. Our Kanoki Detox foot pads sold $40 million worth of adhesive pads worn on the feet overnight, and the company claimed the pads pulled dangerous toxins directly out of the human body through the skin, while the user slept peacefully unaware of the alleged detoxification occurring below their ankles. The pads turned brown overnight, which was presented as visible proof of toxin removal. The FDA tested them and confirmed they turned brown from moisture and body heat alone. Americans wore toxic brown foot stickers to bed for years before federal investigators explained what was actually happening. 82. The Encyclopedia Britannica sold $650 million worth of 32-volume book sets annually throughout the 1990s, using door-to-door salesmen who convinced American families these leather-bound encyclopedias were essential educational investments their children absolutely required to succeed academically. Families made payments on book sets for years. Then, Wikipedia launched in 2001, offering identical information completely free from any device with internet access. The entire door-to-door encyclopedia industry collapsed within 3 years. Salesmen who had spent decades selling knowledge by the pound suddenly had nothing Americans needed at any price. 83. See, wooden clogs were imported from Europe and sold to millions of American women throughout the 1970s as sophisticated fashionable footwear, despite podiatrists immediately identifying them as potentially the single most destructive shoe ever introduced to the American foot. Doctors documented dramatic increases in plantar fasciitis cases directly correlated with clog adoption rates across American cities. The medical warnings were published and distributed. 10 million pairs sold regardless, because European origin gave them an air of cultural sophistication that American consumers found more compelling than the advice of medical professionals who specialize specifically in feet. 84. eClippy was an animated paperclip installed on 500 million Windows computers whose entire function was interrupting Americans mid-task with unsolicited advice about documents they were already successfully completing without assistance. Users developed genuine emotional hostility toward a cartoon office supply. Entire internet communities formed specifically to express hatred for Clippy. Microsoft conducted surveys confirming users despised the feature universally across every demographic tested. Microsoft kept Clippy running for 8 consecutive years anyway. The most hated software feature in American computing history survived longer than most television shows, specifically because removing it required admitting it should never have existed. 85. Say Cheese Whiz was invented in 1952 as an easy pourable cheese sauce and immediately ran into a legal problem when the FDA examined its ingredients and ruled it did not meet the minimum requirements to be legally called cheese in the United States of America. The official government classification became cheese product, which sounds considerably less appetizing when printed on a jar. Americans ignored the classification completely and continue purchasing 2 million pounds of Cheese Whiz annually, pouring it enthusiastically over nachos, pretzels, and cheese steaks while never once pausing to consider what product technically means on a food label. 86. Weed's Silly String spent decades as a party novelty with zero practical applications beyond spraying it at people who did not want to be sprayed until American soldiers in Iraq discovered it could detect tripwires by floating visibly across them before a person stepped through. The military needed 80,000 cans urgently. A New Jersey mom named Marcelle Shriver learned about the need and organized a grassroots campaign, collecting cans from American civilians nationwide. The most frivolous product ever manufactured accidentally became genuine military equipment. Silly String went from banned Halloween decoration to battlefield detection tool without changing a single ingredient. 87. Ionic Breeze. Air purifiers sold $250 million worth of silent filterless air cleaners, and Sharper Image marketed them as revolutionary technology, quietly cleaning room air without the noise or maintenance of traditional filter systems. Consumer Reports tested multiple units thoroughly and published findings that the purifiers cleaned approximately 0% of room air effectively under any tested condition. Sharper Image responded by suing Consumer Reports for publishing accurate test results. Sharper Image lost the lawsuit completely. A company selling a product that cleaned nothing sued the people who measured the nothing and lost both the case and the argument. 88. Herbal Essences relaunched in 1994 with commercials depicting women experiencing what could generously be described as dramatic intense pleasure while simply washing their hair in a shower, which was a premise so transparently absurd that entertainment programs spent months mocking it as the most ridiculous advertisement on American television. The mockery reached every American household. Sales tripled. It became a $1 billion brand. The shampoo formula was completely identical to the previous version that had sold modestly without anyone experiencing dramatic shower episodes. The difference between a struggling brand and a billion-dollar brand was apparently one ridiculous commercial. 89. MySpace had 100 million American users in 2006, and News Corp purchased it for $580 million, convinced they had acquired the permanent future of social networking from 2 young founders who negotiated brilliantly. Facebook arrived and absorbed MySpace's entire user base within 2 years so completely it looked deliberate. News Corp sold MySpace for $35 million in 2011, taking a $545 million loss on a social network that had seemed completely unstoppable just 5 years earlier. Justin Timberlake was among the buyers, which somehow made perfect cultural sense to everyone. 90. Fanny packs were a $700 million American fashion accessory throughout the 1980s until 1995 arrived, and the entire country simultaneously decided the waist-mounted zippered pouch was the single most embarrassing item a human being could wear in public. The mockery was universal and instant. Fanny packs vanished from American fashion completely. Then, 2018 arrived, and fashion designers relaunched the identical product under the name belt bag, priced them at $300, placed them on runway models, and Americans bought millions without anyone acknowledging they were purchasing the thing they had collectively humiliated for 23 years. 91. Google Glass sold to 10,000 American early adopters at $1,500 each in 2013, and wearers were immediately banned from bars, casinos, and movie theaters by establishments that wanted no part of customers recording everything through eyeglasses. The public nicknamed them glass holes within weeks of launch, which is arguably the fastest a consumer product has ever received a derogatory nickname in American retail history. Google quietly discontinued them in 2015 and never once officially acknowledged that anything had gone wrong. 92. Dippin' Dots marketed themselves as the ice cream of the future beginning in 1988 and then filed for bankruptcy in 2011, suggesting the future was taking considerably longer to arrive than originally projected. The future never fully arrived. Dippin' Dots now exist exclusively at sports stadiums and theme parks, where Americans pay premium prices for cryogenically frozen nostalgia beads. The most remarkable achievement of Dippin' Dots is convincing Americans to pay more for ice cream that technically failed than they would pay for ice cream that succeeded. 93. Stretch Armstrong sold millions of a gel-filled rubber man, stretchable to 4 feet, and every single American child who owned one eventually cut it open to discover the secret inside because the temptation was simply too overwhelming to resist. The secret was corn syrup. Children destroyed their toys to find corn syrup inside. The discovery was universally disappointing. Stretch Armstrong inadvertently invented the entire destroy to discover product category that generated billions in subsequent decades, built entirely on the lesson that children will demolish anything if something might be hidden inside. 94. Cy Bedazzler sold millions of a hand-press rhinestone applicator that allowed Americans to glue plastic gems onto literally every item of clothing they owned, and an entire decade of aggressively bedazzled denim resulted from this single product decision. Jeans were bedazzled. Jackets were bedazzled. Hats were bedazzled. Items that had no logical reason to contain rhinestones received them anyway. The truly remarkable detail is that Bedazzler was never discontinued and remains actively manufactured and purchased in America today by a devoted community keeping the rhinestone dream permanently alive. 95. See, Activia yogurt sold $100 million annually by claiming special probiotic cultures, provided digestive benefits unavailable in regular yogurt. And Americans bought it faithfully, convinced the specific cultures inside were medically meaningful. The FTC investigated and found the health claims were significantly exaggerated beyond what evidence supported. Dannon paid $45 million in legal settlements to resolve the matter. They then reworded the packaging with carefully adjusted language and continued selling the exact same yogurt to the exact same Americans who continued buying it without interruption throughout the entire legal process. 96. Our Billy Bass was a rubber fish mounted on a wall plaque that sang, "Take me to the river," when someone walked past it, and 7 million Americans purchased this motion-activated singing fish and mounted it on their walls like legitimate artwork. President Bill Clinton received one as a gift and accepted it. Time magazine named it one of the worst inventions of the year 2000. 200 copycat singing animal products launched immediately after its success. A rubber fish that sang one song became a presidential gift and a cultural phenomenon simultaneously, which explains a great deal about America. 97. Now, jelly shoes were transparent plastic PVC footwear that generated $200 million in American sales throughout the 1980s, despite creating so much foot perspiration that podiatrists publicly compared wearing them to sealing both feet inside individual plastic bags and walking around in summer heat. The medical comparison was widely published. American girls bought millions of pairs anyway because they were colorful and cheap and matched everything, and sometimes fashion decisions are made entirely on aesthetics, with zero consultation from foot specialists who clearly do not understand what it means to have the perfect summer shoe. 98. Knee Laserdisc players were sold to American home cinema enthusiasts throughout the 1980s as the ultimate premium viewing experience featuring superior picture quality that justified owning a player the size of a small appliance. A single movie required two 12-inch discs, meaning viewers had to physically stand up and flip the disc over at the exact midpoint of the film, interrupting whatever emotional moment the director had carefully constructed. 2 million Americans bought these players voluntarily. They stood up mid-movie repeatedly and considered this an acceptable premium entertainment experience worth significantly more than a VHS tape. 99. Surge soda appeared twice in this story because America loved it enough to demand it twice. Coca-Cola launched it in 1996, discontinued it in 2002, and a fan group responded by purchasing a billboard outside Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta, refusing to accept the loss quietly. Coca-Cola relaunched it on Amazon in 2014 exclusively online, where it sold out within hours. A discontinued citrus soda generated 12 years of fan activism, a corporate billboard campaign, and an exclusive Amazon relaunch. Americans fought harder for Surge than most people fight for things that actually matter. 100. Easy Bake Oven sold 16 million units of a toy oven powered entirely by a standard light bulb that somehow generated enough heat to cook real food at temperatures reaching 350 degrees inside a toy marketed to children. The FDA issued formal burn warnings. Hasbro recalled 985,000 units after documented injuries. Then Hasbro redesigned it and sold millions more to the same market because the concept of children cooking real food using a light bulb-powered toy was simply too beloved for safety recalls to meaningfully interrupt. 101. Sensa weight loss powder sold $364 million worth of tasteless crystals. Americans sprinkled onto every meal before eating based on the theory that enhanced aroma would trigger fullness faster and reduce overall consumption naturally. The FTC investigated and fined the company $26.5 million for fraud after finding the science completely fabricated. The founder paid the fine, closed the company, and immediately launched a brand new supplement business because apparently the barrier to entry in American wellness fraud is remarkably low. 102. Ear Candling sold millions of hollow wax tubes through American health food stores by instructing customers to insert one end into their ear canal and light the other end on fire, claiming ancient healing properties would draw toxins outward through the flame. The FDA tested them thoroughly and found they created zero suction, deposited candle wax directly into the ear, and caused documented burns to paying customers. Americans continued purchasing them anyway because the ritual felt peaceful, and sometimes feeling peaceful matters more than what federal investigators conclude about your ear candle. 103. Laser tag home sets were sold to American families as the ultimate backyard battle experience despite running on indoor infrared technology that functioned within 50 feet under controlled lighting conditions only. So every single box showed children battling dramatically outdoors. Every single parent bought them for outdoor use. Every single set stopped working the moment sunlight hit the infrared sensors, rendering the entire product non-functional in the environment it was specifically advertised for. They joined the food dehydrator, the fondue set, and the pasta maker in the garage before February arrived. 104. Juicy Couture knockoffs generated a $400 million American fast fashion industry of velour copycat tracksuits as department stores stocked dozens of imitation brands selling the bedazzled velour aesthetic at lower price points to Americans who wanted the pajama in public lifestyle without the designer price tag. And the knockoff industry thrived for nearly a decade. Then the entire velour tracksuit category disappeared from American retail simultaneously in 2009, like someone flipped a switch. Every store stopped stocking them the same season without coordination, and America moved on without a single backward glance. 105. Slap Chop sold millions of a hand-powered food chopper that required the user to press down repeatedly on a plunger to chop vegetables, which is mechanically identical to the physical motion of using a standard kitchen knife already sitting in every American drawer. The infomercial featured an enthusiastic man making the chopper seem revolutionary and life-changing. No practical improvement over existing tools was ever demonstrated in any independent test. Americans bought millions anyway because the infomercial man was genuinely entertaining, and sometimes entertainment is sufficient justification for a kitchen purchase. 106. Jell-O was such a commercial failure that its original creator sold the entire recipe for $450 in 1897, believing it was worthless. The new owner hired salesmen to distribute free recipe booklets door-to-door across American neighborhoods showing housewives' creative uses for the gelatin. And sales exploded into a million-dollar brand within years. The state of Utah eventually declared Jell-O their official state snack food. A man sold a recipe for $450 that became a cultural institution. He received nothing further, and Utah got the glory. 107. Are fur real friends? Robotic pets sold $200 million worth of battery-powered stuffed animals that breathed, blinked, and made realistic sounds, creating a convincing illusion of life that lasted precisely as long as 4C batteries, which was approximately 6 hours of active use. The battery consumption rate was so extraordinary that a secondary replacement battery market developed around the toy, larger than many complete toy lines. Americans spent more money keeping the fake pets powered than they had spent purchasing the fake pets originally, which was an outcome nobody in the product design meeting apparently modeled. 108. Sight Titty Bear was a real American infomercial product, featuring a small stuffed bear that clipped onto car seat belts to pad the shoulder strap against the chest, and the name was stated completely seriously and repeatedly throughout every single commercial broadcast on American television, without anyone in the production apparently suggesting an alternative name might be worth considering. 500,000 documented units sold. The product was functional, the problem it solved was genuine, and the name ensured it became the most discussed infomercial product of its entire broadcast year, purely through the power of unintentional comedy. 109. Brusensa crystals were sold at $59 monthly as tasteless, odorless powder sprinkled on all food before consumption. And the entire scientific foundation rested on a clinical study conducted exclusively by the company's own founder without any independent verification from outside researchers. The FTC investigated this arrangement and found it problematic. Americans had been paying $59 monthly for powder, supported by research the powder's own inventor conducted about his own powder. The conflict of interest was extraordinary. The sales were real. The science was the founder talking to himself and writing it down officially. 110. Physical CD singles sold millions of $4 discs containing exactly one song throughout the 1990s, requiring Americans to own a CD player, drive to a store, purchase the disc, and return home before hearing 30 seconds of music they had already heard on the radio. iTunes launched in 2003 and sold the identical song for 99 cents, downloadable in seconds from any computer. The format died so completely overnight that CD single sections in American music stores disappeared before stores could even print new sale signs for them. 111. Heelys sold 5 million pairs of sneakers containing a hidden wheel inside the heel, allowing wearers to roll smoothly across any flat surface they encountered, which turned out to be every surface inside every American establishment ever built. Malls banned them, schools banned them, hospitals banned them, airports banned them. Every location with a smooth floor and liability insurance banned them within months of the product launching. And Heelys became the most confiscated footwear in American retail security history. A shoe with one wheel somehow rolled its way into 5 million American households, despite being unwelcome virtually everywhere those households existed. So, America built the most powerful economy on Earth and used it to buy vibrating dumbbells, backward bathrobes, purple ketchup, and foot pads that allegedly sucked toxins out while they slept. No nation has ever spent this much money this confidently on this much nonsense, and honestly, that is something worth celebrating. If you made it this far, you are officially a certified Dumb History legend. Hit that like button, subscribe to Dumb History, drop a comment telling us which product you or someone you know actually bought, and share this with that one friend who still owns a Snuggie. Now go watch what we have waiting for you next, because trust us, it only gets dumber from here.